All right. Hi. So my name's Chris Balding, and I'd like to present my final presentation. And the theme I chose was the next big disruption, which I believe is the self-driving car. So let me jump right into it. So the U.S. Department of Transportation actually defines autonomous cars or self-driving cars into five different levels. Typically there's six. There's a level 0, but that's kind of what we're doing now. No autonomous, we're driving. Um, so level 1, just to kind of walk through a few of these, is driver assisted. So the car controls either steering or the speed, and the driver performs most of the other driving. And a great example of this is adaptive cruise control. The second level is some partial automation, and that's where the car can steer, accelerate, brake in some circumstances, but the driver still changes lanes and responds to hazards. This is a great example of Tesla's autopilot, which we'll talk a little bit about Tesla and others that are operating within the space, thinking about how they can advance some of this innovation around the self-driving car. Level 3 is really the car is more, it can manage most aspects and that monitors the environment. The driver has to be available to take control whenever possible. But really, the areas that most of these companies are thinking about are these last two levels, level 4 and level 5. Really more so level 5, but level 4 is where the car can operate without a human input or oversight. But what happens there is the car has to be restricted to some defined areas. Think of like a highway, for example, where no pedestrians are on there, no cyclists, so there's less interactions for the car to have with other types of things within the environment. But the full autonomous is where the only input needed from a human would just be, where do you want to go? Other than that, the car will drive itself. So why should companies even consider thinking about developing self-driving cars or being part of this innovation? Or better yet, why should consumers? So some of the benefits for self-driving cars really, though, are that the fact that 90% of all car accidents are caused by human error. Some of these could be caused by alcohol, drugs, speeding. It's been estimated that 240,000 hospitalizations happen per year, costing about $23 billion in medical expenses. So this is a significant opportunity for improvement. How about reducing congestion? Time is money. You know, congestion cost U.S. drivers about $87 billion, or a little over $1,300 per driver in 2018. Cities like Boston, D.C., Chicago actually are the worst for driving in a recent study in the U.S. Self-driving cars can help increase productivity. If you're not driving, you can do things like email, you can take some phone calls, you can read a book, watch some Netflix, or my personal favorite, you can just take a nap. Why not, right? If you're not driving, take a nap. But how about no need for a license itself? No need for licenses, or not only that, but even folks that maybe can't get a license or have a license, it improves mobility options for those that are maybe elderly or younger kids or children that might require pickups from sports after schools. So what does the current landscape look like, and what does the opportunity look like? There are a number of players within the space, whether it's auto manufacturers, software designers, hardware builders, you name it, someone is in the space or at least thinking about this. So whether it's folks like Samsung from a cell phone provider, it might be auto manufacturers like Toyota or GM, it might be software developers like Nutonomy, which is based here in Boston. All of these folks are looking for ways to help develop the next breakthrough piece of technology that will help push the innovation and push the acceptance of self-driving cars. Why is that, though? Why do you want to play in this space? The global market for autonomous vehicle market is expected to grow by 26% between now and 2027. Regionally, across the globe, North America actually represents the biggest market share, about 39%, which is actually expected to reach $24.4 billion by the year 2027. So it's clear that there's a tremendous opportunity for revenue growth along a whole new area, along a new business model for a lot of these folks. One area that is great to, I'd like to look at a little deeper, though, is who's leading the space. And we can really look at GM as one of those ones that are really taking a hold of where self-driving cars is going. And if you look through the lens of some of the things that we've learned here in class, is that transformation A, how GM is looking at their current business and what it is that they're doing to make themselves successful in the future. And they've been doing things like closing some plants, shifting to things that are a little bit more on the electric side. They just recently announced a opportunity. There are plans to build an all-electric pickup truck, which is great. And you can see on the right-hand side in the graph there that it's clear that GM is at the top of the hill right now. They are the leader in auto sales. So if they want to maintain that dominance within the space, what else do they need to do? They're going to need to transform on that transformation B side. And that's where self-driving cars actually can help play a significant role in that. The other side of that, too, is they've been forming partnerships with folks like Lyft. They made a $500 million investment in Lyft. They also have their own company called Cruise, which is actually considered one of the leaders among the self-driving space. The next closest competitor is probably Waymo, which is a very different competitor, not someone in that automotive manufacturing space. So it proves that you don't need to be an auto manufacturer to be competitive in the space. So beyond the auto manufacturing sector, disruption goes way beyond just that one particular sector. You'll see disruptions in places like healthcare and trauma. If there's less accidents, there's less need for trauma care at hospitals. Auto insurance. The auto industry may shift to more industry-facing versus personal use and consumers. Shipping will change. Thanks to that Amazon effect. Everybody likes fast shipping. Improved telematics and fuel savings with a term called platooning, which is really where cars can be connected together where they'll talk to each other. That allows the self-driving vehicles to almost draft off each other in a really close proximity, which can have significant fuel savings over long-term travels. City revenues. The impact on disruption on our cities can have a significant dent to their revenue. In the 25 largest cities in the U.S., about $5 billion comes from these types of things, fees like parking and taxes, registration, and traffic citations. In fact, traffic citations alone accounted for $593 million and parking fees, $1.5 billion. So if cars don't need to park and they're not speeding, where a city is going to generate that additional revenue to provide services? I already mentioned auto manufacturing. They'll have to start shifting the way maybe consumers think about owning cars versus shared. And really, the car becomes more computer than car. Auto repair is going to be affected. If there's less crashes, how are people going to maintain working on these cars? There'll have to be new skills and software-driven tools to fix these cars. Land uses within cities. If we don't need as much parking, or we can reconfigure roads, this could create an opportunity for housing and development and help with more equitable access to housing, more green space and bike lanes for other forms of transportation. I mentioned electronics, that the car of the future would have more electronics. And some reports actually predicts that 50% of the automobile could be electronic, with cars with things like sensors and cameras, connected cars, connected technologies, like I mentioned before, which may even present the opportunities or the possibilities for cybersecurity. So like JFK mentioned in 1962 with his literal moonshot of putting a man on the moon, companies need to be thinking about their own moonshot. And it's clear that a lot of people are playing in the space thinking about their own inspirational future state that captures that imagination of their organizations. And for them to reach their moonshot, they really need to think through a couple things. They need to determine their growth gap. You know, what's the gap between the current state of that company now and what's the future state? And GM's doing a really good job of this right now by maintaining still a strong hold on continuing to sell automobiles in its current way, but thinking about electric and developing partnerships with others like Cruise and Lyft to think about the self-driving car. Determining goals and boundaries. How long do you want to wait? How much do you want to invest? GM invested $500 million in Lyft. The big potential is right now, by estimates, year 2027. Are you going to determine your strategic opportunities? Is it compelling? Is it believable that self-driving cars can be there by the year 2027? And will these companies have this future-backed mindset? Are they thinking critically about the near-term actions to start their journey now to get themselves to that giant aspirational moonshot? And some things that they really need to be really thinking about in the back of their mind is you can't overlook that innovation on the fringes. What's happening in those other disruptive spaces like the auto insurance and electronics, all those areas where they can develop and leverage partnerships to accelerate some of that development? Are there policy changes happening at the city level that could open or close the door to some of these things that you're putting in place? Are customer habits changing? Do they want this? Is this something that they're looking for? And this is something that those that are playing in the self-driving car space really need to be considering for them to kind of reach their potential and be successful with their innovation around self-driving cars. I hope you liked my presentation. I hope I convinced you that the self-driving car is truly going to change things in the future. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me via email. But I hope this was informative, and hopefully you learned a little something. Thanks for the time. Take care.